Hi, I'm from OpenRose team, and today I wanted to talk about the critical role of requirements management in product lifecycle, going from minimum viable product all the way to becoming a market leader. Now, I just wanted to go first in a search engine and look for images about minimum viable product for car manufacturing. So just search for that here, minimum viable product for producing a car. There are lots and lots of images available here, but they are all talking about a similar way of looking at manufacturing a car. Let me open this one up and make it a full screen. And as you can see, people are recommending that please do not start with the wheel and two wheel and then the car body and the complete car. Rather start with something that moves, whether it is a skateboard or a small scooter or a cycle or a moped, and then build the car. So make something that users can try out and give you the feedback. And you can see here there are lots and lots of such images available. Different people have been creative, different companies have used a similar example to show how to build a MVP. But do we think that really this is how the world works? Perhaps for some companies, yes, but maybe not always. When you are working with minimal viable product, you may try different components or you may try producing something which is demoable. But to get the instinct about whether this is going to be a successful product, is this something you should invest in or not, will not be understood unless and until the first version of your product is really being made available for the customer. A lot of time, people don't have enough money, they don't have enough time, they don't have enough resources and skills. So if you try to go and sell your idea of manufacturing a car by showing somebody a skateboard or a cycle or a moped, they may not actually just even understand what you're trying to do. That's why I think it's very important to concentrate on your first version, which may have less number of features, but it is actually the product that you would like to produce and sell in the market. And to get to that product, it's very important to understand the requirements right from the minimal viable product all the way to becoming a market leader. Because if you capture those requirements, then you are going to build on top of the original requirement that you have captured for MVP. As I understand, the purpose here for companies is not just to produce MVP, sell some number of your products, and then close it down. No, MVP is just a start. It's not something you would end up with. And that's why making MVP thorough and giving it to the right people in the right market to get the correct feedback whether you should invest more in those MVP products or not is the way to go. You have to give your 100% in terms of the processes and how you will actually go about manufacturing your MVP. How about you giving it out there in the market for getting the real feedback about your product? So let's continue discussing about these car manufacturing. Now, if let's say you go via this route or you go via this route, whichever is the appropriate route for your product, we are not going to debate about which method you use, but whichever route that you take to get to that product, when you make a change, so from a skateboard to cycle, when you're making that change, you are making a lot of changes. Things that you have already tried and tested in your first MVP, a lot of these things gets ripped out and new things gets added. So the complexity changes. And this is where making sure that you do a very good requirements management at different levels. Perhaps the high level requirement, which is the business and stakeholder requirement, those don't change. The original requirement was to produce a car, a fuel efficient car or battery efficient car, but when you go via the different steps in your MVP, things keeps changing. And when you make a change in one place, it can have impact on other places. So for example, when you go from skateboard to cycle, you are adding a pedal, you are adding braking system, you are adding possibility to sit or stand on your pedals and drive your bike, or perhaps you're adding a seat, an extension seat for someone to sit behind on the bike as a passenger. So when all those things gets added, your requirement has fundamentally changed. The functional requirement and non-functional requirement for that product has changed. Then when you convert the bike, which is your cycle, into a moped, you are adding an engine, a fuel efficient bike, which is nothing but the moped. Then you need to make sure that you add necessary components in your moped to be regulatorily compliant, and it should be fuel efficient, it should be safe for the passenger, it should have a compartment to store stuff, it should have a braking system, it should have headlight, it should have tail light, it should have a strong stand on which you can park your bike. There's so much that goes in on top of going from cycle to bike. And the same way, it changes a lot. The whole thing changes a lot when you go from your moped, which is your bike, over to the car. So what I'm trying to say is, you need to manage your requirements, especially the functional and non-functional requirements, to be able to come up with something that is the first version, or even 0.1 version, 0.2 version, something which is a product that you can give it to your customer. They should be able to trial it, they should be able to start it, use it, stop it, give you the feedback. Okay, so quite a lot of discussion about the MVP here, and there are lots of images available online. You can go and have a look at it if you like. But let's go back to the blog post that I started with. So what we have done is we have published our thoughts about why requirements management is very critical, even for the product that is just kicking off. You're starting with it, you are looking at manufacturing the first MVP. When I say manufacturing, we are not talking about mass scale production. We're just talking about some number of MVP product that you can give out to the right people to test it and give you the feedback. So we have captured quite a lot of information in this blog post, and I just wanted to highlight a few of them. Now, for automotive industry in the MVP, what is quite critical is the safety standards, the performance validation, and the regulatory approvals that needs to be obtained before the public road trials. Now, these are just some non-functional requirements, but you have to comply to them. And when you have to do these compliance, then your requirement changes. Your functionality of the product is impacted. Which components do you use, and how do you go about getting the regulatory approval? All those things matters before your MVP can be put out. Now, MVP becomes more and more complex as in when you go from version 1 to version 2 to version 3. So in that case, what you are doing is you are developing your concepts and you're doing a lot of feasibility studies, and then you're producing your prototype and experimental models and things like those. But in today's world, I think the people who are manufacturing car, they really don't start with skateboard. I don't think so. People who have ambition to build a car, they generally start with given amount of planning in terms of the budget. They hire right skilled people. They identify the right components to be built and component suppliers to work with. They work with universities and researchers to fund their research projects and get input from them. And then based on several different inputs, they decide to go for MVP. I don't think that they really start with the skateboard. But that's just my feeling. In today's world, people are seeing what is out there already, and they check whether do we have our own ability, our own skill sets, budgets and time, and backing from investors, and also do we have this domain knowledge and expertise. They look at those things before starting the MVP. That's what I feel, especially in car manufacturing industry or aeroplane manufacturing industry or ship manufacturing industry, large shopping mall that people build, theaters that people build, trucks that are being built. And I feel similar for even IT and software, industry. People do produce some MVP. Different people who have different options in terms of the budget and time may produce different type and scale of the MVP. But then if you do not provide enough funding or enough attention or enough time to produce the real product very close to how users can use it and give you the correct feedback, then it is highly likely that your MVP may not go further. You may stop the development of your product after initial one or two round of the MVP. And that should not be the goal. The goal should be becoming market leader, really a competitive product in the marketplace. MVP is the first step that you are climbing. There is a lot more to be done, and that's where writing your requirements and managing your requirements right from the beginning and adding the traceability to it, defining the baseline, and having a clear understanding of what you are trying to build and sharing that information with the whole team, which includes not only the people who are developing the MVP but also those who are testing your MVP, will become critical. Let's go further down here. I just wanted to talk about establishing requirements management framework. So you can use any different method to produce your product, as I was explaining, but all these methods would rely on the clear requirements. You have to have requirements management tool. Ideally speaking, having requirements management tool really adds a lot of value because they allow you to define your requirements as individual objects. So here further down, we are talking about MVP, a foundation for the final product, not just the experience. What I'm trying to say here is that MVP is your first step, right? You don't want to conclude your product development once you have delivered the MVP. That's just to test whether market will accept your product. Is there a future for your product? And that's where you produce the MVP. But it has to be a car. If you're in the car industry, your MVP should not be anything lesser than car, to be very fair. It may not have all the jazzy features and everything, but it has to be a working car. In a similar way, if you are developing, let's say, a software, then it should be installable. It should have data storage. It should have a UI. It should allow users to interact with it and give you the feedback about the same. So yeah, MVP is just the first base version, and then you are going to enhance it further, not just stop it there. It's not just really an experiment. Experiment actually comes way before MVP. As I mentioned, you work with research and development groups, you look at what's happening in the industry, you find out and build your skills and build your team with the necessary skill before you even start producing your MVP. Are we asking the right people? So that's another important aspect. A lot of time, people who produce MVP, they give it to market and they wait and see what happens. I think that is not great. It would be ideal to have experienced users, advanced users, who can give you early feedback about your MVP. Some of those important feedback will help shape your product going forward. Then I think you need to have your channel open for feedback. Your business analyst and product management team and product owners needs to listen to those feedback, take them on board, work with what is available in terms of the budget and the skill set in your team and the time for your next product increment, and then decide upon going forward with the next version based on those feedbacks as well. So here we are talking about working with the right people to obtain the feedback, but those feedback also needs to be fed all the way back into enhancing your requirements, whether it is functional or non-functional requirement of your product and services. And then we have a conclusion here about the importance of requirements management in terms of MVP. You can say you start with small set of requirements. Again, producing MVP may not have massive impact or changes in the business requirement, ideas, epics, initiatives. Those high level requirements may not change so much. But if you do not capture and work with proper functional and non-functional requirements, then there are very high chances that you will not be able to produce quality products and services for your customer. We thank you for your feedback. If you have more comments about this topic, then please feel free to give us those comments, write them down in the comment section below. And we will appreciate if you can share this video with others. If you would like to use OpenRose, which is free and open source requirements management tool, then please go ahead, download it from our GitHub repository. We have deployed a lot of documentation there as well. And if you would like to contribute in terms of using our product as well as giving us the feedback and contributing towards the source code or the documentation or the future enhancement request, then please feel free to send us your feedback and your requests. Appreciate your time. Have a great day. Bye for now.